That sound.
Isn't it beautiful?
It's a good
It's
sound.
A good sound. I'm so glad you could hear
That's
it.
a good sound.
It's a Sunday night.
Family and friends, welcome back to Tested Normal. This is Curtis.
This is Jordan.
And this is, I believe, episode 97?
97.
Big 97?
The big
Nice,
97.
fantastic. Oh, it feels so good to be back this week, guys, and share life with y'all. Share life and discussions and crazy world events, and just kind of figure out the challenges that we're facing right now, right?
Yes.
And some of the exciting things
yeah,
too.
like 3D
some of the
prints.
exciting things.
I don't know if people were watching for a second there. My son came into the room because we have a couple of 3D printers in here now, and he was showing me the other thing that was the TIE Fighter, but this is the X-Wing. It's kind of falling apart because I think you're supposed to glue it. But you print out these flat parts, and then it assembles together and makes this X-Wing. But look at that. Isn't that cool?
You 3D printed
he
that?
Did. It came out on like a business card, and then you would get like those kits at the store, and they pop out and assemble. Like they pop out and like like the wings all pop together. Good
job, man. That's dope.
So the one
Right
earlier,
on.
that black one he made was a TIE Fighter, I think.
Oh, cool.
One of these wings is backwards. Look at that. Oops. That's probably the one I just broke and assembled backwards. Anyway, not to bore you guys.
Well, for anybody out there, guys, we're going to hit the ground running with some pretty impressive and important kind of world events that lately have developed. One of those, and Jordan, I'm going to be interested to hear your input on this particularly.
I hope so.
I'm going to, if you could pull this link up for me, bro, about Elon Musk's Neuralink company, and what they recently developed was a really cool kind of situation where they implanted several nanowires into this monkey's brain.
Which had done pigs
and they were able
to this, right? Was it pigs?
What they've done pigs prior to this, absolutely, yes. And then what they did was they had a monkey, and they had a little metal straw, and they had a remote control and a TV screen in front of the monkey. And so the monkey received rewards when he moved the remote control in a specific direction that then allowed a ball to move towards a target. Okay? Well, what they did was they recorded the neurons and the brain waves that were taking place during when the monkey would move the remote in a certain direction, right? So they were able to map out this monkey's neural processes. Now what you see, if you go back there, I don't know, but eventually what you end up seeing is that they actually disconnect the remote now, and the remote has no wire connected to it in a little later part of this video. And what happens is the monkey, they then connect that neural link to the game, and then the monkey, he's still moving his hand because he thinks, that's how he was trained.
Right.
But really, it's now his neuropathic brain waves that are sending the same instructions to that neural link that it's then connected to the game, and it's moving the device around.
That's wild.
So it's wild, and it's revolutionary. Specifically, they're thinking for individuals that have individuals that are paralyzed in particular, or certain impairments, where they're saying, hey, if we can figure out how to map these brainwave activities.
He's not using his hand anymore. He's just drinking the smoothie.
Yeah, he does that with what's that game called? Pong?
Yeah.
Or Pong? Yeah. Right. Sorry for the veterans of Pong.
Sorry to offend you. Sorry, not knowing
what
that was. It's funny that they picked that. It would have been hilarious if they picked Doom or something like that, where he's controlling actually, that'd be kind of terrifying. Never mind. But I take that back. You're training the monkey with his brain to control a robot to kill things.
Yeah, to shoot.
Never mind. I take
people.
back what I said. I retract my statement that would be cool. I would be horrified.
But it's one of the first times that we've seen an actual neural implant that has been that successful with remotely controlling certain surrounding devices without any type of wires.
Right.
External.
Yeah, it's weird. I've read about these things. I actually had someone bring this up to me tonight. Asked me if I'd seen this video. I was like, yeah, I've seen it. I have some thoughts, and I do have some thoughts that we can get to, but
Yeah, I want to hear them.
what was he saying? Like I think he was just asking me what I thought of it, and I was like, like as an IT person, I strongly think this is cool, and what I told him, that's what I was saying. I read an article probably about a decade ago now in Wired magazine where they had tapped into a guy's optic nerve and hooked it to a visual processor that helped him to see.
Mm,
He wasn't born blind, but he lost his sight due to some sort of disease or something, and they tapped into his ocular nerve, and we're doing these tests, and he loved to come in because he could see, quote unquote, again through this webcam. And this is before webcams were like, like people might say like mine looks clearer than yours, but webcams were, yours is like right now the clarity that your camera is coming through is far superior to what webcams used to be.
yeah.
And they would pass like objects like tennis balls and stuff like that across the table, and he was able to, with some training, catch them by
Oh,
seeing through this. But they they thought they killed him one time because he just like slumped over. And what they found out was they had overloaded his brain, and he basically went through like a reset, like a computer would reset, and
yeah.
he passed out and then came back to, um, which is kind of scary. So for things like that, I
Yeah.
think that's really really cool. But at the same time, I think, and this is where I actually was watching something this week. I can't remember who it was talking about this, because there's this whole like, this is where you knock up against transhumanism, and that's like a term that's kind of been thrown around a lot lately. And if it sounds like that's like sci-fi and scary, and so this is kind of where my brain goes. Is there's a fine line as to which there are people who are very afraid of death and trying to avoid it, and so things like this, they're thinking I could offload myself, I can get
Mm,
past the human condition of life and death
right.
and live forever, which I don't, I mean, extending life I'm fine with, but then you get into these questions of like, is it a person, is it just memories, is it just a computer, is it what? And we've seen these superhero movies where people do that, and the villain ends up being this like crazy killer. So if you keep the wrong people alive for a long time, that's bad. um,
Mm,
so I guess it,
interesting.
to me, it starts to marry together these things, and so there's a little bit of, no, I wouldn't say like frightening, but just like hesitation towards
Hmm.
some of that stuff, because I think
Sure.
if they're already listening to our social media and getting us to buy in and learn about us that way, if that they can implant something where they can actually hear our thoughts or know what we're thinking, what's going to be tracked next? Like,
Ooh, that's an
and
interesting point.
so,
So almost so your concern isn't necessarily uh, the fact that technology would empower
mhm,
people or give us new abilities. It's more so for the potential for abuse
yes,
from
yeah,
surveillance from external
which
sources.
I would say that about a lot of things. So like, I think that some vaccines are good and they've done good things, but as we've seen, there's been some questions around like the COVID Wuhan incident. Was that out of a lab that was trying to make something that was bad for humans, and now we're having to inoculate for it, or being told that we should get
Mm.
vaccinated for it?
Yeah,
And
that's an
so
interesting
like
subject too.
there's a positive and there's a negative there. But I was also having this conversation with someone today. Is you have to be really really careful how we set up our society to give certain people controls, because you're not always going to have the reins. So that's what's interesting in our countries. We have the Constitution. It's supposed to keep the government at bay and have it be led by the people, so that even if someone who doesn't have the best of intentions, I'm not saying this current administration or past ones, I'm just saying if someone gets in there that maybe doesn't have the best intentions for everyone, that it can help to protect those of us from it. And so I think that these things are
Sure.
good, but they need some heavy protections. I struggle to say regulations or whatnot, because I tend to be. I think you and I are both kind of in the same thing. Is like the least amount of laws and regulations you can have, the better. But you can't have none.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of technological developments in particular, and this goes back in history forever. Like, I mean, the most like applicable example of like technology and like having reservation for technology and development would, I guess, be like the nuclear bomb,
Right.
right? An atomic weapon. Like the technology and the development of it is such a amazing feat, but also like the risk to reward ratio is very high.
Right.
And so with technology in particular, we're seeing a huge amount of potential benefit from a lot of this technology.
Mhm.
But I think the better word, instead of maybe saying regulations, maybe we could say like safeguards with technology. Whereas it's something that I actually give a lot of credit to Apple for in general, at as far as like regulation goes and in governmental regulation compared to many other companies, they actually have been a really decent proponent
Mhm.
of preventing government regulation within their software.
Yeah.
Um, and so I do think that technology in particular, and I think even like specifically Elon Musk, I do think he has a pretty, somebody might call this silly, but I think he has a pretty level head on him as far as his concern as far as government control and not allowing the abuse of his
I
technology.
I would
I
agree.
believe with him.
I've told people that. I'm like, you look at him and he's if you put him up against other billionaires in the world, he looks crazy. But if you put him up against like me on Twitter, he looks pretty normal. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, or anyone else. Maybe I'm a bad example, but like he seems like a pretty average, just kind of speaks what he thinks kind of guy that just happens to have billions of dollars and is trying to make the world a better place. And
Okay, but let me ask you this: is there a billionaire that isn't crazy?
no,
Because for example, I'm going to throw out there another kind of, this is kind of a good segue into something that's pretty wild. I wanted to get your opinion on as well. Something I listened to a recent talk on this, a recent scientific
mm,
journal on solar geoengineering, and something that uh, one of our fellow billionaires, Bill Gates, has been advocating for is solar geoengineering, where he wants to release a large amount of photo radio like reflective
mm,
material into the atmosphere to try to decrease the global temperature.
ooh,
Um, and it's a really interesting situation because there are there was more studies on the subject than I had like expected. There's over 100 studies within the past like several years on this
mm,
subject. Um, but the interesting aspect of it is a right. We don't know the ramifications of the entire world having the degrees, temperatures drop rapidly, over global circumstances. Um, but also like it comes into a situation of thinking about a billionaire making a decision for the entire world,
yeah. So
right?
I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying about the Neuralink. Is like, what if it's going to affect everyone? Do we know that that's a good move? And does everyone have a say? So
Right.
and so, like we don't.
But
Here's the
how would
thing.
Neuralink
Regardless
affect
of
everyone, though?
your
Tell me
of
that one.
your how would what
How would Neuralink affect everyone?
I'm
Like,
saying,
were
if
you saying?
say they got to the point where Neuralink was required,
Okay.
and now they can track your thoughts.
So kind of like in today's world, you have to have an email basically to be in the workforce.
Not necessarily, because that's the last spot where you're you that no one can touch.
No, but like you can't work unless you have that type of
No,
technology
no.
right now.
Well, yeah, you could, but I'm saying I can turn that off, but I can't turn something off that I've been told. It's same as our vaccine thing. It's like, it's one thing to say like, I'm going to withdraw from that and not do it, but
Hmm.
to require something that is a permanent change to somebody, I heard it put this way this week, is that we are a country, and I'm speaking just our country because I know that not all countries are like this, but this is where we are. We're in the US. Is that we are a country where we are to protect people's rights. And you should, I think we could both agree, be able to live your life as long as you're not infringing on someone else's rights. At the moment that you do, that becomes a question. So For instance, freedom of speech is a right that we all have. They call it an inalienable right or a God-given right, however you would believe
Hmm.
it to be in our country. You can say what you want to say. And the false narrative going around right
Say
now
what you
is
want to
yes,
say.
except you can't say fire in a movie theater, which was a case that was thrown out a long time ago, and you technically can. It's not a good idea, and you can get in trouble for inciting a giant
Well,
panic.
okay, is that actually true
Mm-hmm.
that you can say what you want to
Yeah.
say? Like, can you tell a police off? I've seen many videos where like if you wanted to like whatever, like talk shit to a police
Mm-hmm.
officer and like call them names and all this stuff, like they have some precedence to detain you
So
or
they
arrest you or something
probably are
like
going to
that. Like
find
that's
they're going to
sketchy
find
to
a
me.
reason to do it, but that's why they say the freedom of speech is also the freedom to be silent. And that's why they read you your rights, which is your right to remain silent. Anything that you say can and will be used against you in a court of
Hmm.
law. So it's smart to be quiet. There are times where it's smart and it's wise to shut up, but it doesn't mean you have to. And so, at least in
But can you be held accountable for what you say though? That's the
only
thing,
see
right?
that's where that case comes into play, and that's the lie that's been kind of being touted
Mm.
this week about freedom of speech is like, yeah, but you can't go into theater and say, and they're using this specifically because they're saying it correlates with gun rights. Okay, and I can get into why that is, but we'll back off that for a second. I know it's weird. So they're saying, but you have freedom of speech. You
Who?
can't yell fire in a movie theater. That's not true. You actually can. It's just a terrible idea. It's a bad decision, but they can't.
Well, I think you. Well, I don't know though, because I think you can say
Mhm.
it, but then if the ramifications cause
Yes,
harm to other
and that's where
individuals, then
you've
you're
now
held
infringed on
accountable,
other
right?
people's rights. If you caused, say, you did it and trampled and someone got killed, that's bad. You
Right.
were free to say it. You probably shouldn't have, but there's no law saying that you can't, and there's no checks and balances making sure you're not going to when you walk into said theater. So you have that right until it infringes on someone else's. Just like you can make a statement that says like I want to kill this person. You actually can say that. But until it's a pointed do this now, I'm moving and acting or I'm asking you to move and act on this, it has not gone again. It's still not a wise thing to say. You're going to be judged for what you
Mm.
say, but it's not against the law. Um,
What's interesting about that in particular is like for, and a lot of people probably already know this, um, but for like counselors, this is something we've had a conversation I think in the past about this, but if you like are having a private conversation with your therapist or
I'm not
your
laughing at you. I'm
doctor
laughing
or
about a deep thought I just remembered about counselors. I'll tell you
oh
when you're
okay
done.
okay all right perfect. But if you're having like a conversation with your therapist or your doctor or whomever, and then you like confess to them that you murdered somebody, right? Like that is protected confidential information. Like they can't go and tell the police. Like if you said, "Hey, I've been a serial killer for the past
Yeah,
20
they can't
years and
say it.
I've murdered 30 women in cold blood," they cannot go to the police and confess
Yep.
about that. However, if you then say, "I intend to kill
Yep.
more people next week," and they say you have an imminent threat to other people, that's when you don't have that
Yep.
freedom of speech and or confidentiality, I guess.
Yes.
But that's just
No.
random
That's
interesting
that's
fact.
and that, but that is totally in line with the First Amendment because they can't. You can't be incriminated for that because you haven't said something that's moving towards or commanding someone to do that now. So, but as soon as you cross that line, then they can speak out. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
the deep thought I remembered.
Oh
this is
yeah.
this is great. For those of you who don't remember Jack Handy from Saturday Night Live, it actually predates me for the most part, but I love deep thoughts. Is I think the mistake a lot of us make is thinking that the state appointed psychiatrist is our friend.
The state
Yes.
appointed, yeah, especially state appointed. That's
Uh,
hilarious. Yeah, that's fair. That's
yeah,
fair.
don't do that,
Um,
folks. Don't do that.
I don't know. I think that as far as like getting back to the
Mm-hmm.
technology, Elon Musk, Neuralink, I see it only from I think it's a glass half full kind of situation.
Yeah,
I'm really excited
I
about it.
would say that too. I think there's some exciting elements of it, just like there were computers, but we have a lot a lot of
Mhm.
regulation around the technologies that we have. That's, I mean, we had the talk about social media. It's largely unregulated, except to say that they can't be held liable for some things due to Section 230, right? But that is a new thing, and it hasn't reached the
Ooh.
same regulation that a lot of the things that we have, like telephones, didn't used to be that way, and roads didn't used to be that way, and all. But
Okay.
as soon as they become something that is like needed for life, and society, and to like interact here, there's regulations on it.
Okay, but didn't something really interesting just happen with Clarence Thomas and Section
Yeah,
230?
you sent me a picture where
Um,
he made a statement. So
Jesus
when they
Christ.
have court cases, they can
An opinion
they
was
can
issued by
make an
him.
opinion at the end of it, and it's their own. They can. It's kind of cool because you can see just what just what that judge is sort of thinking on an issue. And he said that, I think he said something like, paraphrasing, but like it's time that we regulate social media like we do utilities. Um, it was a picture you sent me. Like, you sent me a
Yeah.
link. I think you just sent me the
So, oh
picture.
no, this is what he said. He said, okay, so he said, um, okay, he said, so took the opportunity to write a short concurring opinion which explained why the government should regulate social media companies like so-called common
Yes,
carriers. So this is what I'll read his statement here. If you guys don't mind, here
do
I'm
it.
gonna read this to y'all.
It's good.
Let's see here. This line thinking is strict. If the analogy between common carriers and digital platforms is correct, then an answer may arise for dissatisfied platform users who would appreciate not being blocked. Laws that restrict the platform's right to
Hmm.
exclude. So that wasn't very clear, but
No, but the title, so the headline essentially kind of summed it up, and I think it is what he meant, because I saw it a couple other places. He
hmm,
suggests regulating tech platforms like utilities. Um, so, for instance, if you don't like seeing what someone
yeah.
says on Facebook, I'm totally fine with you taking your right and blocking that person or hiding that comment or whatever. And you can do that with your phone. You can block a person on your phone. I don't think it's necessarily
Right.
for a lot of instances. If it's like abuse or something like that, I think it's good. But a lot of times, I would say, and I ask this of people that like make, complaints to, like, our city and stuff. Like, hey, so and our neighbors don't follow the rules on this. And my first thought and question is, have you talked to them? Like, have you tried to seek out a solution that wasn't just like tattling?
But also, conversation on social media
Is terrible.
platforms is
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. There are, I guess there are some conversations, but I think a lot of times, like, I've made comments on things and disagreed with someone and said, "Hey, to go further with this, I think it'd be best if we could hear each other's voices at least." Because I don't want to wreck a relationship with someone.
uh,
And
go
largely
on.
we just disagree anyway, but it's fine. I'm fine to have the conversation. I want to respect them and show them, "Hey, I can have a differing opinion and still talk with you about it, but let's both present our perspective and see what we can learn."
Hmm. Okay. Speaking of learning, anybody out there is familiar with what's going on with Russia right now and Ukraine? Can you give some download? Because obviously, this is from what was it?
It
2015?
started in
Was it 2015?
2014.
2017?
It was, from what I
2014?
understand, and maybe someone in the comments can say, because I read it. I read enough on this to kind of get an idea, because I saw, like, we basically said from the U.S., like, "Hey, if you do something, there will be consequences," which is like, it's like, sounds kind of like a parent saying it to their kids, like, "If you do that." But you know what caused the problem? From what I could tell, the tension started. I think the tension's been there long before this, but in 2014, I think it was, they had annexed, like, part
Right.
of Ukraine,
Crimea.
right?
Crimea, yeah.
And
Which is the southern
and
port
so
of
now
Ukraine.
they're like building forces. Both of them have kind of built forces in that area,
Oh.
and they're kind of passing the blame back and forth. Putin had said some things in the past, and like, there's clearly tension. There's been, but I mean, a lot of these areas have had tension for a long time. Um, so yeah, but
Okay, so the
we actually
forces are
said something,
mounting.
and it wasn't Biden. It was, I think it was like our Secretary of State, or I'd have to look again at the article. It had a picture of him. I recognized him. Um,
Let me see if I can find it. But I know that obviously there was a bunch of drama when Russia basically invaded Ukraine,
Secretary of State, I
and
was right.
then
Anthony Blinken said Russia's reckless activities in Ukraine.
Blinken.
Uh, U.S. Secretary. Oh, that went away. I have to tell you, I have real concerns about Russia's actions in the borders of Ukraine. President Biden's very clear about this. If Russia acts recklessly or aggressively, there will be costs. There will be consequences.
Well, it's so like Crimea, and actually I think all of Ukraine prior to the USSR fall was part of the Russia
Mm-hmm.
party, right? So Ukraine used to be a part of that, but then when the wall went down, the USSR fell down, Ukraine became its own independent state. But Crimea is a specifically important port of access for Russia, and so they wanted to be able to have that military outpost in that region and be able to have that naval
Oh,
presence.
so it's not
Um,
just them. It's just that a summary here. Russia's troop deployments in Crimea and its neighbors bordering are raising the stakes after fighting intensified in what had in recent years settled into a low-level conflict between Ukraine's army and the Kremlin-backed insurgents. So it's like Russia
mm,
backing some people there. And
gotcha. Yeah, yeah, because then that Crimea allowed Russia to have access to the Black Sea, and if they didn't, then they wouldn't have access to the Black Sea, which then gives Russia access to the Mediterranean Sea, which then gives them access to what's that port that we just went through all that drama with? Suez
the
Canal, right?
the penis boat.
Yeah, I think it's the Suez Canal. Suez Canal.
I'll
Suez.
forever just
Suez.
think of that
Suez.
boat drawing a penis in the
But
ocean.
hey, you gotta draw something,
It's
man.
true. Bored
Gotta
out
draw
there.
something. You gotta get your artistic side on.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of like crazy kind of building tension, not referring to penis boats, but more so with countries in particular. Um, okay, so last week I talked about how the Chinese um, flotilla or whatever, like multiple ships were moving into the
Hmm.
Philippines and into that like fishing community
Right.
region. Well, now it's kind of built to another level,
Ooh, good.
and Vietnam is now getting involved with this. And this is really interesting. So Vietnam um, has not a massive navy or force, but they actually have some pretty high-end um,
Right.
battleships. Um, and so Vietnam is now saying they actually own that territory, not China or the Philippines. And
So they're
so
just
what
throwing their
I'm
hat in
kind
the
of
ring.
they're throwing their hat in the ring. And what I'm kind of hoping what develops from this situation is I'm kind of hoping that the Philippines and Vietnam and some of the Malaysia, even whatever, some of those smaller country states in that
Right.
region will be able to take a stand against China. Basically, China wants to own the world. So
Which we've
hopefully it
known.
will help to prevent China from building its fleet farther south as
Right.
well. Um, and that was a pretty interesting development this past week that Vietnam is now in the place where basically like these are like heavily armed battleships
Yeah,
that
dude.
are
Look at
like
that thing.
starting to like yeah like they're basically like throwing throwing sticks at each other, and like it's heating up in the China Sea right now. So it's I'm not saying like war is about to happen, but keep an eye out on this, guys. Like
But
this is
war's
like a
about to
pretty
happen.
wild situation. But war might be on the verge. And so, did you know about all of the drama between Australia and China?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it some here where they were
Hmm.
getting kind of mad about them restricting some things and then saying some things about China and not being nice about how China handles their people and whatnot. And then they
Yeah.
said like, if you don't stop, if you make us the enemy, we're gonna become the enemy.
Yes. So then, what's developed from that is China put a ban on trade with for a majority of the supplies that Australia traded with
Really?
China. So China, yeah, China has a massive ban on a lot of the trade that they were typically doing with Australia. And I didn't even know about this until a couple weeks ago when I was watching this
Right.
video. Um, and what happened is China threatened them because China's, has how many? 2 billion, almost 2.5 billion people. So that's like a big market.
Huge.
But China so heavily relies on coal that they said, okay, we'll ban everything, but we're not going to ban coal because we need that really, 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 really bad. Well, Australia says, listen, if you're going to ban us from all these other things, we're going to increase the prices of coal to you. And we're going to start selling all these other items to these other surrounding nations. And China and Australia, actually, their GDP is actually increased since they stopped doing business with China. So now China's starting to say, like, okay, well, if you're going to start trading with these other countries, which is like the Philippines, Vietnam,
Right.
Taiwan, a lot of the surrounding countries in that region, like obviously they do some trade with like the US, but it's so far away they don't do as much. Um, the that these other states now, I see a coalition forming with Australia, a lot of these smaller countries in here in particular, like forming some type of coalition to try to curb the expanse and the rise of the Chinese CRP, Chinese
CCP.
Republic, or CCP, Chinese, no, CRP,
Oh.
something, China Republic Party
Yeah.
or something
I
like
mean,
that.
I've
So it's kind
said
of
for a
crazy
long
though,
time, it's like the way that, here's the thing. You have all these companies like the MLB and Delta and all that kind of stuff getting mad at Georgia for creating voting ID laws. Not even really creating them, just like re-solidifying them and actually giving more people access to vote, but because they've painted it as racist, um, these companies have done these things. But yet, so they'll say, you're disenfranchising voters, right or wrong. I think they're wrong, but even if they were right, these companies still do business with China, who we know don't treat people well. Like they don't.
Mm.
If they're really for human rights, why are they dealing with China?
Well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Can you post this link that I put on there? It's from Reuters, and the title is China launches hotline for, I'm not sure what that word is, Nietzscheans to report illegal history comments. So now what's happening right now is
What?
China's cyber regulatory committee, whatever, has launched a hotline. So individuals, if they see anything that defames the Chinese ruling party and its history, that the Chinese party says, hey, call this line. It's a tip line, and says, hey, if you hear anything that's derogatory towards the Chinese party or the history of the Chinese party, let us know, and those people will be punished. So essentially, if you say anything online in the Chinese government or in the Chinese, I don't know, internet, I don't know
Netizen. That's
whatever
what
they
it
would
is.
call
That's what I was trying to figure out what that means. It's a person
it. A
person
netizen.
who is a frequent or
Okay.
habitual user of the internet, a member of the
Okay,
community
that's
of internet
interesting.
users. So that doesn't even mean just them or just their citizens.
Right? Oh yeah. Yeah.
So and this
Well,
is so
but
this is what
because
I'm talking about. Is like if Delta's right that Georgia's disenfranchising people of color and whatnot for voting things, and MLB is right and they're moving the All-Star game and everything, why are they still doing business with this country?
Well, and it's not just this. Like the Chinese government has released information. Reuters. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you.
Reuters.
Reuters.
Let's call it Reuters.
There you go. Reuters.
Roto
Reuters.
Rooters.
It's a cousin. It's a cousin of Hooters, but it's like more
I
news
went
kind of worthy,
completely to the
whatever.
garbage where I was like Roto Rooter. Like
Reuter. Um, the Chinese government passed a law. We talked about this, I think, last
mm-hmm.
year, where that they, if you talk any type of derogatory comments, whether you're a citizen or not, in anywhere in the
Yeah, they put
world,
out
you can be considered a
yeah,
criminal.
and so they asked for people to be deported from the US that were citizens here to them. In fact, it's not really super wide known, but you can go find the stories on it that there were some Canadian citizens that were deported and taken hostage by the Chinese government. And at the same time, the Chinese army was coming over and training with the Canadian army at the same time. They were doing business with China as a country, knowing full well that they had multiple citizens that were locked up for saying things wrong that they've deemed wrong about the Chinese Communist Party.
So here's the situation. Uh, A lot of it, I think all of it probably, like most people would probably agree with this, boils down to the financial ramifications that the Chinese people bring, and the financial
Mm.
benefits that that country brings to trade, right? So these large companies, the NBA, if there was no financial benefit
Oh, it's all about
to
money.
their
It's
to their 3 billion people
Yeah, it's
living
all
there,
about
right?
money.
Then then the NBA would probably make a statement releasing saying that they are against enslavement camps of
Right.
Uyghurs in the
Or
country,
anyone, like
concentration
literally
camps.
anyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, whatever. Those things are wrong. Like we should
It's
all
nuts.
agree
It's
on
it's
that. Like
it's so crazy. And what's really crazy is that like how, and I think China's played a part in this. I really do. Is how it's almost a social. It is a social taboo to have any derogatory comments about
yeah.
China, like in like popular
Well, you know
media.
why? It's because they can't then put their movie into one of the largest markets in the world. So you notice we used to have a lot of like Chinese spy movies and stuff like that. None of that's around anymore. And it's because China didn't want them to look bad and they wouldn't play those movies or allow them into their country. And so they've done what they do to get a larger audience. And so
Oh,
so
fascinating.
they don't they own quote unquote the our media only because they'll lose the biggest market in the world if they don't bow to that.
Mm, okay, so someone that I was super proud about, and I think if you guys know, I'm a or don't know, I'm kind of a fan of MMA, right?
Just
I've dabbled in that
slightly.
world. That's like right, that's like my sport. Um, so a person I've been really proud of lately is one of the former um, one of the former champions in MMA. Her name is Rose Namajunas. She's a strawweight fighter, and she's going against she in UFC 261 coming up here. She's going to be fighting against um, one of a former, I think she's former now as well, strawweight champion. Her name's Weili Zhang, and she made a really cool comment. She said, "Hey, I don't hate Weili Zhang." She's like, Rose Namajunas was talking about this Chinese fighter. She's like, "I don't hate her," but she was saying that because she comes from an immigrant family
You say
that was
261?
suppressed. I think so, yeah.
I don't see it on the 261 card, but that one does have Masvidal in it.
Yeah, it's on there. I'm pretty
Maybe it's a
sure.
prelim. Nope,
It
it's
could
not.
be. That'd be really weird if it was. Yeah, double
I'm
check it though.
checking the
Um,
early. What was her last name again?
Rose
I
Namajunas.
don't see her anywhere on
But
261.
uh,
In main prelims or
what
earlys.
what she said was, she says she made a comment. She says it's better to be dead than red, is what she said, and that like caused this big stir. Like, what is she trying to say here? And basically, what she was saying is that her family comes from a background of being suppressed by communism,
Mm,
and she grew up in Lithuania, or her parents did, and they had a lot of suppression from the Communist Party in Russia, and she recognizes that the Chinese Party, Communist Party, even though they call themselves a republic, um, they she says it gives her basically extra motivation. But it became this big drama of her saying like, hey, should she, is that racist of her to be commenting about another country, another fighter and her political views and all this stuff. It's like, no, she's saying like she doesn't have anything against this individual person, but it gives her motivation to think like, hey, I'm fighting for a political viewpoint as well that I think is very important. And that was, I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool, and I was impressed with her like stand on
yeah.
that.
Oh,
Rose Namajunas. Okay, let me
it
see
was
here.
260. It is
Uh,
261. But I,
it is
but I
261.
don't.
Okay, that's
I
what I
didn't
thought.
see her on the
I'm pretty sure
card
it is.
though. Huh.
Uh,
Oh no,
let's
there it
see.
is. It just wasn't in the pictures on UFC's site. I wonder if they took it down.
Oh, I see it. I see it. Oh my gosh, so that UFC 261 is such a good fight, dude. Jorge Masvidal, Rose Namajunas, Valentina Shevchenko,
with Andrade.
Uriah Hall, Chris Weidman, Anthony Smith. I mean, every one of those fights on that main
Wow.
card. Oh god, I wish I could go to that fight. My gosh, I wish I could go to that fight.
Well, folks watching, if you want to come watch that with us,
If
I'm
you
sure that
guys,
now we just scheduled a date.
yep, pretty sure that's
Oh
happening.
my
So anybody
gosh.
that's interested,
Yeah.
that's gonna be an amazing
So
fight.
I think that we've had this talk off and on about freedom of speech. I think what we're coming I think at least when I see this kind of stuff and I see someone making a statement like that, I see all these things being said, I see countries that are trying to keep people's speech down. Um I that it shows me, at least in my opinion, how important it is to reaffirm and bolster our First Amendment rights and make sure that we don't lose them. Because if we do, I, I can't point to a country in history that doesn't end up somewhere like this if you don't give people the freedom to speak and to say what they're going to say, good or bad.
You know, Jordan, it'd be pretty cool if we went to that fight.
Did you even hear anything I just said? No.
Well, I'm just looking. I'm not gonna tell you the prices of these tickets, but I'm just thinking this might be like a once in a lifetime thing to go to. It's in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, we'll have to talk more about this after
We'll
the
chat.
fight or after the the podcast.
Anyway,
Sorry.
what I said was, do you remember? Or did you not hear it? You didn't hear it.
Something. Yeah,
I,
I agree. Free speech is
so I
very
think that
important.
it is. And what's here, again, my opinion, you can disagree with me, totally fine. The First Amendment is there because it's one of the most important things to protect. And the Second Amendment is there in case the first one is infringed upon. And we've had that's the argument that's coming up this week in the news, is saying like, hey, sorry, we're gonna start to require more things of you for firearms or take them away, restrict certain things. And I don't know. I don't like to join the people that are always like freaked out about gun grabbers and stuff like that, but I think it's also another thing that I could point to, that I can't name a country that didn't do that first before they became more communist. Like,
I don't know. I think Australia is a pretty good example of a country that, although they have more guns now, according to a recent article, right?
yeah, in 2017 there was
Although
half
they
a million more
did,
guns.
I think Australia is a really good example of a country that has regulations, also has social programs, but also has a lot of individual freedoms and privileges that they strongly protect, and also a great example of a country that protects its sovereignty far more than even I think the US has done in a lot of
I
ways.
don't know. Here's the thing. It doesn't stop bad people from being bad people. So like, name a law. Like, here's my favorite question to people.
Corky,
I know. I just laugh. I was
I'm
laughing
sorry.
at that too. It's so good. Yeah. You need to wipe your chin.
Corky made a comment. He said you should probably take a tissue and wipe that fight drool off your
For
chin.
reals. Yeah.
I need like
So
several
my
tissues.
question
Let's
is,
get
what to people that are like, I think there needs to be stronger gun laws. What name your favorite gun law that you don't think exists right now? Because most people that follow the rules and the laws, there's already a ton on the books. The people who have committed crimes and done heinous things, which are inexcusable and awful, wouldn't have been hindered by any of the laws that we have, or any that I could think of that would do it, besides making guns never invented. Because if you just take them away, it doesn't mean that there aren't any.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't have the gun control. That's something I don't see. I have no idea for that. Honestly, I don't know what rules or regulations. I think maybe there could be more regulations with screening individuals, and this would be controversial, but screening individuals and maybe even psychologically screening individuals, like having like a psychiatric kind of eval, maybe even that could check
But
people off before,
how
like
does
in the.
that so how does that affect someone who gets a gun illegally? It doesn't.
No,
It's
no,
only
but I think
affecting
that.
those that legally have
Sure,
them now.
sure, yeah, but a lot of the crimes that have been committed as far as mass
Hmm.
shootings have been through people that have legally
They've
acquired
got it through
their
straw
weapons.
purchases. Most all of them have not purchased them themselves.
No, a lot of them have though.
Well, they had
A lot of them have.
access to them, which I'm a
Well,
fan
just
of.
like Las Vegas. Las
Hmm.
Vegas was a great example. That last guy, he had a mass
Right, but
arsenal, right? And he had a lot of
I guess what I'm
psychiatric
saying is
issues.
the shootings and things that have taken place. Now, most of them
Mm.
statistically are black people shooting black people or black people shooting Asian people. But those statistics get left out, which is sad
There are a lot of
because
those. Yes.
that needs to be addressed, and I don't think it has to be addressed with a like your. It's just there's some education that needs to take place there. There's some things that need to be looked into as to what is causing that. I think there's a lot of division in our country. I don't think anyone could argue me on that. But of the shootings that have happened, if you psyche evaled everyone that legally got them, there's not there's it wouldn't make a dent in the crime that's taken place, even if even if you removed guns all the way. So I'm saying like you can't regulating the people who already legally have them. You might stop one, which you could make the argument, well, one's enough to do the whole thing, but it's like drunk driving. Like we don't stop selling alcohol.
Well, I think it's
Like
just I think it's just the little steps. I don't think it's necessarily finding one solution for everything, but I think making certain changes and tweaks and adjustments in the same way you have a vehicle and you find like, oh, this makes this vehicle work better
mhm.
by having this type of adjustment.
Well,
I
there
think
has
that
been those
that's the
types
same
of
thing you
tweaks,
could
but
do
like
with
I'll
gun
quote
control.
like our president houseplant this week said, you he said this is quote, most people don't know that you can go to a gun show and buy a gun without getting a background check. So he's quoting, and this is what people love to do when they hate guns. And I'm specifically not saying like Democrats or Republicans because I think this is a nonpartisan issue. He's wrong. He's lying. He's quoting the gun show loophole, which does not exist. It's not a thing.
It did though, didn't it? At
At
one
one
point.
point, private sales at gun shows you could do, but
Hmm.
if you go to a gun show, all the tables are licensed resellers. You have to get a background check to go to.
Now.
No, even back then. So the only thing
Hmm.
that they've changed is you can't go to a gun show. I can't carry a gun around and then sell it to you and not do a background check as a private sale.
Gotcha.
So the gun show loophole didn't exist. It wasn't ever a thing. It was a made up like figment of someone's imagination to sound really bad. But when it comes to purchasing firearms, about the only way you could get one if you couldn't pass a background check is if you tricked someone into selling you one on the street, stole one, or yeah, it's about the only way. Like you can't like even in a lot of states you can't I can't even just give a gun to my son now. Like even I can't make the call. I have to do a background check to transfer a gun to him, which I think
Yeah.
is insane because currently right now, if you go to purchase a gun, you have to talk to a person, right? And these people
Well, you could build a gun. You could
but
build a gun without talking to
you
somebody.
could you could, but if you weren't going to build the receiver yourself, you'd still have to purchase that because the part that has the serial number is the only part that is considered a firearm. You still, even if you just go purchase that, I know, there's some stipulations, but if you went to purchase that, you still have to go through a background check. I've bought like lower blanks for AR-15s. It's not a gun. I can't shoot it. It's just shaped like one and has a serial number. I still had to get a background check in order to purchase that piece of metal because it's ready to have parts put into it and turn into a gun.
But there's also that part, right? That piece of metal you can actually. It's not called a. It's like basically they sell it as a piece of metal. I think they
They
call it,
call
and then you have to
they're
drill the hole. You
incompletes.
drill the
So
hole.
they're incompletes.
Yeah.
They aren't. That isn't just drilling a hole. They're actually pretty difficult. I've known a lot of people who've gotten them as a project, and it's it's a significant amount of work in order to do it. And in a lot of states, you still have to license that. Um, some you don't. I'm not a.
They just
I
can't
don't think
track it if you
honestly they
don't.
should.
Basically.
But here's the thing: it's illegal for a felon to even hold a firearm, like to even possess one. If I just wanted to go out shooting with them and hand one to them, that's illegal.
Hmm.
I have to know that as someone, but that would be the case for other illicit substances. I'm not allowed to give you know my prescription to somebody else with my name on it or something like that. Like that, we
Well,
work in
I think
those.
yeah. Obviously, there needs to be.
But
I think adjustments.
I will say
I think.
this is something I learned this week actually because I was looking at this.
Okay, go quick. Go quick.
Is if you go to buy one, you not only have to get a background check that is at a federal level, but also if the dude's selling the firearm behind the counter, because they have to go through a lot and they have to get licensed to be able to sell firearms, if he questions you and doesn't think that you are sane or that there's something off about you or whatever, he can cancel the sale. He can make the
Sure,
call.
but couldn't he always do it? I mean, isn't that the right of somebody selling something to
Technically,
somebody?
well, it would be tough because you might argue he's infringing on your rights, but because he is a firearm reseller, he has the right to refuse to sell a firearm to you if he thinks
Right.
something's wrong.
Okay, but let's get down to the other thing that I was saying though. Yes, he does have the right to do that, but there's also a bit of a conflict of interest of him not wait. Oh shoot, can you hear me?
Yeah.
There you go. Sorry, I thought I
No.
lost you. There's also a profit to be gained, right? So it makes sense for a dealer to want to
Yeah.
make money off of selling an item. I think that in general, moving forward, there are steps and there are maneuvers that we could do to ensure the safety of legal ammunitions or weapon sales. Like even from the perspective of like if you're going to sell your item, like you have to have maybe better I don't know if it's better tracking of where items get if you own an item and then you lose that weapon, like tracking methods so that way it can't be put on the black market as easy,
How can
or
it
if there's
not
some
be?
type of
It's
eval,
just a serial
like
number.
psychological evaluation.
Yeah, but
Well,
see, I
even
think
putting a
I guess
chip, putting some type of tracking in
no,
that
that's a
weapon.
bad idea. So,
There you
but
go.
like no,
Well,
it's a
or
that's
the psychological eval. I think that there's nothing wrong with having a psychological eval prior to actually owning a weapon. I
but
think like if
you'd have to go you'd have to
you're in
look
that
at
position,
what is the number one, you'd have to look and see what does that take. How many would that statistically have stopped for legal firearm purchases that
sure.
wouldn't have done it? And if it's like a minuscule number,
I
why
guess
would
it
you put
depends
that
on.
on
I guess it depends on
everybody?
the value of human life. Like, although, like, okay, say it depends on the person. Like, say, okay, maybe it'll only save 10 people's lives. Well, those 10
Well,
people, that's a pretty
for
big deal.
sure, but if that's the case, then we would stay locked down forever because the flu kills more than that.
Well, I think that you have to look at it in terms of obviously 7 people. I'm not that's
No,
not
no,
an
no. I know.
accurate number,
There's
but
a
I'm saying
risk
like
reward
if
in
it has
everything.
a potential impact, if it has a potential impact of saving lives and it's not putting undue harm on your country or a person's ability to earn profit or whatever, like basically majority of the times weapon sales, most people are not necessarily using it for their job. Some people are, some hunters, some individuals, but for the majority, it's more of a recreational item or a protection item in
Right, but
some
it is
places.
unique in the sense that a car is not a right. The Second Amendment is a constitutional inalienable right to keep and bear
Mm.
arms. And so you have to ask yourself, is asking somebody to go through a psychological evaluation because they've shown
Okay,
nothing before just for a few people that are bad, is that infringing on someone's right? And if it is, you shouldn't do it.
so you're saying it's because it's a right, there shouldn't be as much restrictions on
Yeah.
it. So maybe so you could see that somebody could say the same counter argument towards voting.
How?
It's a constitutional
Hmm.
right to be able to vote.
Right.
So
But I
when
have
you
to
put
prove who
more
I am.
restrictions, hold on, let me finish what I'm saying. If you put more constitutional restrictions and inhibit somebody from voting, then that's putting this. I'm not saying it's the same exact
No.
situation, but that's another area where people are concerned that you're putting more restrictions. They go back to that Jim Crow
Hmm.
comment. There's more restrictions on voting. So I mean, you kind of you're arguing for gun control, but you're also or for less gun control, but more voting
No, I'm
control.
not.
So it's like there's
Because there's
kind
a
of a
difference.
counter
Because when it
concept
comes
to
to
that.
guns, it's just me. If you let anyone vote and not prove that they're a citizen, you're now invalidating a vote for every person you let illegally do it. So you're having them infringe people's rights.
Well, what do you say when it's a gun? It's just you. Like it's not just you. Like gun rights is the
No, I'm
entire
saying
nation.
that's my right to own a firearm. You shouldn't infringe on my right to own a firearm just because someone else has made a bad decision.
Right, and you shouldn't infringe on somebody else's right to vote just because somebody else
I'm
made a
not
bad
infringing
decision
on their
too.
right to vote. I'm saying they should prove that they're a citizen because that's a requirement to vote in a federal election. And if someone votes who's not a citizen, they are infringing on the rights of somebody who is. For every person who votes incorrectly, they're invalidating a vote for somebody who has the right to vote. So there's a, you're
Yeah, I'm not sure I
I'm
understand what
saying
you're
like
saying.
they would cancel out a vote. So if I vote, say I vote for Trump, and an illegal
Hmm.
immigrant votes for Biden, he cancels my vote. So you're infringing on my rights because you did not verify who he
Okay,
was.
but that's the same thing. I mean, I guess yeah, you're saying that vote, but I would also say like someone who could counter that argument again is someone that potentially could be not mentally stable and get a weapon. They're infringing on that person's right to live if they go and
I'm
kill
saying
somebody.
if they're going to infringe on someone else's right to be alive, that
Right.
they shouldn't have one. But we have those laws already.
So maybe there
We
should be more
That's why we
regulations
have
towards
people. That's why we do a
mental
background check.
capacity,
Has
though.
anything come up? Have you shown that you shouldn't have this?
Yeah, but those background checks don't show a
They
person's
show an entire history.
psyche. Doesn't
It
show their
would show up if
psyche.
they
Doesn't
had
show their
it.
psyche state.
I'm saying so.
Not no,
So
not
here's the thing.
necessarily. It wouldn't show if they're
You're
on antipsychotics.
by doing that, you're saying we're gonna fight.
No, I'm just saying like if there's regulation, if you want more regulation on one thing and less
I don't
regulation on
want more
another thing,
regulation
there's
on
a bit of
voting.
a
I want people to prove
contra
that they're supposed to
contra.
vote.
Well, but that's also a form depending on how they want them to
Mm-hmm.
prove. There's regulations that are
So all they
different.
require to vote is ID, and you show it to them, or show that you live there and that you have residency. That's it. They actually expanded voting in Georgia. They're saying they infringed. They actually made it easier to vote in Georgia by doing this. The only thing they did was add that you had to verify your ID when you register online. That's it.
So what was it in Georgia that they took
They
away?
didn't. They added. It used to be that in order to
Mhm.
register to
What
vote,
did they change? What did they change?
they
Let's say
said to
that.
register online to vote, you must provide a driver's license number off your
Oh,
driver's
so you have
license.
to have a driver's
Well,
license.
they're saying there's a multiple IDs that they'll accept, but basically, if you live in Georgia, you should have a driver's license or a Georgia ID if you're getting anything. And statistically, 97% of their residents do. Like it's not something that people don't have. People, if you're homeless, you still have to have ID to get certain things. You so everyone you're not infringing on someone's rights to buy cigarettes by requiring ID. You're just checking their age that they are valid to be able to purchase that product. So it's the same thing. So what you're talking about individual rights on both sides, but one of them is infringing on someone's rights and taking asking someone to go through another loophole to spend extra money to get a right that they already have just because a few people screwed it up. I think that's wrong.
So I'm looking at what it was, the requirements
Mm-hmm.
now, and it is specifically you have to have a Georgia state driver's
Yeah, because you have
license,
to be a
an
resident
ID
of
card
Georgia.
number, and a date of
Mm-hmm.
birth. Well, but you can live there and not have a driver's license. So what they're saying is a lot of the concern, not necessarily for illegal immigrants, but they're saying for indigent population that live
Yeah,
there, or they're
they
saying
had
a
a
lot
big
of
issue with that
like the
because
poor socioeconomics, like the black community in that area. They're saying that inhibits their voting potential, and that's true. Like it
how
really could decrease the number of ability for those people to
how
vote. Well, first of all, let's look at right now. Look at first of all, how hard is it to get into the DMV to get a
I'm
driver's
saying
license right
right
now,
now,
anyways?
statistically, they put it out when they made that law. 97% of our residents currently have ID right now.
I don't know if that's true. In the state of
Yeah.
Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying?
Specifically, because
Yeah,
that
I
was
don't
the
know if that's
argument they
true.
had, and they said no, 97% of people do, and they've made it
Yeah,
the ability
I
to prove it in multiple ways,
even if that is
and
true, that shouldn't eliminate the 3% that should be able to vote.
they should get ID and prove part. So
Maybe they
part
can't.
part of voting is proving citizenship. You have the right,
So
but you have to prove that you're supposed to have it.
maybe part of owning a gun should be proving that you're psychologically stable,
Why? That's not it.
having a
It's not
psyche
there.
valve.
I prove that I'm a.
Why not? If
If
it
I
saves
prove that
lives.
I'm a
If it
citizen,
saves lives,
I
why
prove
not?
that I'm a
In the same way they're
citizen.
changing this.
Yeah, but so
Yeah, in the
if we
same
all
way they're
stop driving
changing this
cars, we
law
would.
with hold on. Let me
Yeah.
finish this. In the same way that they're proving, that they are a citizen and or proving a
Hmm.
resident of that region, then I think there's no reason to say that they shouldn't have the argument that you should prove that you have the psychological stability to own a weapon that could easily, with a pull of a trigger, kill somebody.
If it is an inalienable right that you can keep and bear arms.
If it's an unalienable right to be able to vote, is that an unalienable right to be
No,
able to
there's
vote?
stipulations on that. You can't be a felon.
Well, there's stipulations on owning a
Hmm.
weapon already.
Right.
So then we should
So
add
why
stipulations to
should I
that.
have to?
Why shouldn't
I
we?
prove that I'm a citizen to get it. It's the same thing as voting. If we all stop driving cars tomorrow, less people
Yeah,
would
but
die too.
we're adding rules to voting
We're not. They didn't add a
in that
rule.
region.
They clarified it.
No,
No,
they
they
did.
clarified it,
Right, but
and they added it for
no,
online.
they
It's
added it.
online
Right,
registration only. Before you couldn't register
right.
online.
So they're
They're
adding
giving more ability to vote.
rules or
No,
regulations.
they actually made it easier to vote in Georgia.
Either way, there's rules to that voting.
Maybe you should have a psych evaluation to vote.
Yeah, I think psyche valves all around for
Here's
a
the
lot
problem
of
with psyche
decisions.
valves, and I had the same problem. And I know you're gonna scoff at me. I had the same problem with like our medical community, is that it's subjective. It changes. So one psyche valve could say one thing and one could say another. The problem is it's not black and white.
Well, I think that there's um it's it's actually more black and white than you think. A lot of evals, if you look at certain, basically like their score systems, and an individual can answer those questions, and then when you review those questions with an individual, after you've done it enough, you can tell if there's accuracy to those scores,
I
those
think
score
a lot of
systems. Like
Seattle
there's
serial
a
killers
lot of
prove you
those
wrong on
tests.
that one. Like
Like
the
what?
ones that
Who?
live normal lives and were just murdering mass amounts of people and seem like normal people. I worked with a guy that worked with the Green River Killer. Said he said hi to him
I
every
don't know.
single morning. He was a great guy.
I know Ted Bundy, I think, lived in Seattle for a little while.
Yeah, he did, and I actually met a lady who got picked up by him. She didn't meet his profile, and he got really mad and kicked her
What?
out.
That's crazy. Okay, guys, I think it's time for some TILs and some showers.
Yeah, who evaluates the evaluators? That's my psych evals. I'm against him. You can be for him if
Yeah.
you want.
Well, yeah. I think, Corky, that's a good question. Medical boards. You have to pass medical boards, and you have to have certain residencies. And when you do those rotations, you have to pass multiple tests and exams. And so, yeah, that's who evaluates
I think we're Mike.
evaluators.
So we had this conversation beforehand. Like you question things as an 8. Where my questions come into play is these medical boards are the ones that gave us the food pyramid. These medical boards are the ones that got bought off, and sugar talked them into saying that fat was bad and sugar was good. And it comes down to greed. And I guess I just question people who are in these positions that are trying to take things away from people, saying they're doing it for the good of the people, when it just looks a lot like some of those things again.
Mm. Yeah, I think that there's a, without a doubt, there's an evolution, especially if you want to talk about medicine in particular. I think there's an evolution within medicine and improving through 100 years ago. The technology and the opinions and the practices of medicine 100 years ago were nowhere near the level that they are
I'm just
today.
talking 30 years
The
ago.
amount, the capability. Well, even 30. Well, yeah, for sure, 30 years ago, even. Like, so you build on your previous knowledge, right? And so to recognize that you have to build from previous knowledge, but also you have to accept the fact that you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to grow, and accept the fact that things aren't always going to be perfect, and you have to accept the fact that we have to learn from our past, right? And obviously, like example A, look at the Tuskegee trials, right? Like look at the black community that was used as experiments to test infectious
Right.
diseases, right? So obviously there's no question that the medical community has not been above board
Yeah.
throughout history, right? But what comes really important is when you look at evidence-based practice. That's where I find medical recommendations of value. So go if you guys have questions about research, about medicine, about a lot of studies in particular, if you have a rudimentary understanding of statistics, go look at PubMed. PubMed is a great place where you can see an amazing amount of studies that you can evaluate. You can even look at their uh, I can't remember if it's a membership or not. I can't. I think I get free access through the hospital. I think you can go to Los libraries probably and get it. But if you have actual medical research questions about medicines, anything like that, go to PubMed. That's a great place to look up
Yeah, I've looked up
research
stuff
questions
there.
in particular.
I guess I that's my thing is like if you can't there's no blanket rule that works for everyone, and it sucks that awful things happen in this world. Sometimes guns are used for bad things, sometimes cars are, sometimes alcohol is. It doesn't mean that we just
Sometimes voting rules are.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
expanded.
look at the maps. What are those called?
Oh
Jury
yeah, the
rendering or jury
gerrymandering.
uh jury rigging, gerrymandering. Like there's
Oh yeah,
abuse
I
within
think
voting
so.
for sure.
I think that there needs to be some things that are talked about at that and smoothing them out. But I don't. I guess what I'm saying is like in the. I mean, I have I don't even know how many guns I have, but I would say I've done a lot of legal things
You've done a lot of gunning.
to obtain them, and I
Some illegal too.
no none illegal. Um, and I think it's one of those things that's unique to our country that I don't think a lot of people are going to try to explain it away the way it was tried to explain away this week that we don't have time to talk about. But like from our current president houseplant, he said that constitutional amendments are not they're not set in stone, and I think be careful what you say because constitutional amendments are things that made slavery wrong and made all these other things that we know that we learned from that we needed to get rid of and give people the rights that they have. And as soon as you say that those aren't set in stone and those aren't concrete and those aren't the things that we live by, you're inviting a really really bad wave of things into our country, and that's scary. That's more scary than Neuralink.
Making yeah, constitutional amendments is interesting. Yeah, that's a
Well,
whole nother
yeah,
topic
that's the
for
way our
sure.
constitution was set up, and we could talk all about that. But it's
Right.
like we have the Bill of Rights, and then we have these different documents that make up what the constitutions, and the constitutional amendments actually are what was set up to create
Mhm.
like a bed or uh, a platform for our country to
But
be
also
on.
the thing that's interesting about amendments in particular is that as our country ages and needs and demands and things change, like we have different requirements. Like even like things the internet wasn't
Mm-hmm.
around during the constitution, right? So there's maybe amendments that apply as we evolve technologically, socially, mentally, whatever.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
I
I think
guess where I
amendments
would
are
go with
important.
that is like if you look at the internet, it's a new way of communicating, like a telephone. But you still use your voice, you still use your words, all those things. So those rights that we already have apply to it. When it comes to things like vehicles, like it's a little bit different. Like we have the right to move about
Mm,
our country, but it doesn't say how we move about
mm.
our country. So it's not a right to drive; it's a privilege that you need to be able to pass this test, but it's not written in as a constitutional amendment. It's not,
I wonder if we
and
can
the reason
add
why we
rights.
can, but it takes quite a bit through the Senate to do
I should
so.
have known
But
that.
but that's the point is that, and I think that's what we need to realize is like there's a reason why the First Amendment was not guns, that it had to do with what we say and how we speak. And then the Second Amendment was literally written by people who had just left a country that kept telling them what to do and were getting taxation without representation. And they said, if anything should infringe upon that first one, which we lost, we want some way to regain it back. And they put
Well,
the
and this
Second
is
Amendment.
this entire thing is a good example of why the freedom of speech is super important, and to have different opinions in
Yep.
particular, and the value of being able to have those. And that's why we all need to have a sensitive ear and eye out for the oppression of the
And
Chinese
yes,
party
Haley, we're
to
still
the world.
friends.
So I'm just saying out there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Haley. Of course, we're always going to be friends with you. Um,
Well,
Okay, my first TIL. Here we go. Today I learned that in World War One, Nobel Prize winning physicist Marie Curie developed mobile X-ray stations to travel to the front lines and assist surgeons in preventing amputations when limbs were still intact. An estimated that over 1 million soldiers were X-rayed with her units during World War One. I had no idea there was mobile X-ray units during World War One. That's amazing. That lady is just
That's
like
insane.
so impressive.
I
So cool.
wonder. So
So
like
cool.
now you go to the dentist and there's like a lead thing that they throw over, and then they walk out of the room and all that kind of stuff. Like, I wonder what
Yeah.
kind of radiation they didn't protect themselves from in that early of a.
Oh, massive amounts of radiation. They were well. That's how she died. She died from cancer radiation. Yeah, that's how Marie Curie died, from cancer. Kind of crazy.
Wait,
All right,
that
hit me
wasn't in your
first tail.
TIL though. That she
Yeah.
died because of it.
Oh no 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 no. Sorry, that was just a fact that I
Okay,
had
yeah.
remembered.
That was a good question I asked. Then she ended up dying because she did too many X-rays.
Not just, it was from when she was studying
Mm,
radioisotopes. So she was studying radioactive material, and she didn't understand the fact that it was actually going into her
right.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah, or damaging her
Goodness
cells.
sakes.
Yeah,
So
pretty
she
cool.
did a lot
Pretty
and
crazy.
then also died because of it.
She was a superwoman.
That's
Yeah, she was
crazy.
amazing.
Today I learned when former Tonight Show host Johnny Carson died in '05. It was a long time ago. Um, Late Show host David Letterman recited a comedic monologue at the beginning of the show, revealing later that every joke had been written by Carson, who had been sending in 1 or 2 jokes a week during his retirement.
Oh my gosh. Whoa. That's cool. That's really cool. I like that. Today I learned, this is exciting. Today I learned the US Navy is replacing the heavy and clunky control panel for the ship periscope with an Xbox controller. The USS Colorado is the first to have the conversion installed, with plans to convert all Virginia class submarines with Xbox controllers.
Why not PlayStation?
I like Xbox controllers. They feel so
Yeah.
good. They feel so
It's just like
good.
Men in
Feel so
Black
good.
when he, in the second one, spoiler alert, I think it was the second or third one, when his partner comes back and he goes to drive the car and it pops out a PlayStation controller to drive the car.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Today I learned, contrary to the publicized image of the upbeat patient joking with surgeons, Ronald Reagan lost half his blood and came within seconds of dying in 1981 when he was gunned down. Funny. His true condition was concealed from the public for nearly 30 years.
Whoa, that's wild. That wow. So he was super close to death. That's crazy. Today I learned. Here's a little anatomy lesson for your I don't know, animal lovers out there. Today I learned that the platypus has no nipples. None. No nipples.
What kind of animal are
Their
they?
milk, a platypus, they're like a combination of a mammal and a marsupial, right?
Yeah, they're like a
Aren't they
unique
a combo?
thing.
They're like a multi, they fit to two different types of species. Their milk actually oozes out of mammary gland ducts and collects in the grooves of their skin.
That's disgusting.
So they have, like, instead of nipples, they have skin grooves. That's kind of wild, right?
So Wikipedia describes it as a semi-aquatic egg-laying mammal endemic. What? Its family.
Endemic?
The platypus is the sole living representative of its family, Ornithorhyn something or other. I can't even pronounce. There's no like phonetical. That's a long word. Anyway, it's its own. It's because it's basically
Whoa.
a duck beaver. Like, like it doesn't fit a category.
Very true. Very true. That's hilarious. Okay. Let's see. Hit me. What's your next? You got any
I don't
more
have any more
TILs?
TILs. I just have shower thoughts. I'll go
All right.
first.
Shower thoughts. Shower thoughts. You go
You
first.
don't understand how many things a muscle does until that muscle is sore.
So true. Or a tendon or a ligament.
If you can't tell which
My
one
God.
it is that hurts, you're just confused.
My God. Yeah, it's miserable. Okay. It's literally impossible to forget things on purpose, yet we all get mad when someone forgets something.
I've forgotten things on purpose.
You haven't meditated on it, but like if I told you my favorite number is 12 right now, you couldn't forget what I just said.
I don't know. There's been some people that have
Yeah, I know
there's
it's
been some people
interesting.
that have told me things and said don't tell anyone this, and so I just told myself don't remember that. And literally 3 months later, someone says like I had totally forgotten about it, and they tell me I'm like I do remember someone telling me that. So it's like
Right. It's a little bit of a gray
yeah,
shower thought, gray area shower thought. But also like
it's not like
a person
on
doesn't
demand like
often
a
forget
like it's gone.
like yeah, like if somebody said, "Hey, will you come to my house tomorrow?" and you said, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And then you forget, it's not like you said, "Hey, I forgot on
Yeah, but
purpose."
forgetful people that are constantly forgetting, I guess to me it just says you don't care.
Very true. Very true. Very
This is
true.
a controversial shower. This is just a controversial show.
I actually really appreciate that, Jordan, because obviously like but that also goes interesting into like texting, right? Like if you a certain person places a certain value on an individual's text to
Sorry I
them.
didn't respond to you that
There's a
one
ranking.
time. My goodness.
There's a
Just
ranking.
let it go.
There's a ranking, right? So no, for example, like if Annie texts me and she says, "Hey, I really need you to text me," or "Hey, I really need this information," I'm like, "Oh shit, I have to text
Right.
her back." Like otherwise this is gonna be bad. But if my buddy in Missouri texts me and I see it and I'm like, "Oh, I don't need to text him back right now. Like I'm at work, it's not that big a deal," you
Right.
know? But so there's value ranking to remembering certain things in
Oh,
texting, which is
as this,
random.
as
But
the older I get, the more I realize how much we actually like do risk reward, and even like how much do I value human
yeah,
life based on a certain decision. And
yeah,
you feel like, oh, I'm an evil person for thinking that. Everyone does it. Everyone does it every single
yeah.
day.
There's certain value
Yep.
based. Yep, value based decisions for sure.
Yeah.
All right, hit me.
Someone is going to be the world's first space pirate, and probably just for the title.
I love that. That's amazing.
Like no one's done it.
That's amazing.
I guess I'm gonna be a pirate.
Um, yeah, that's funny. Um, People rarely ever use their glove departments to store
It's
gloves,
true. I put them in the back.
right?
I wonder if it was like originally like this is where I keep my gloves because I have to start my car with a crank.
Ooh, or it was like they didn't have very good insulation, and so their cars were
Driving
always
gloves.
cold, right?
We
Yeah,
should bring
driving
back
gloves,
driving
exactly.
gloves. I only drive
Yeah,
with these special gloves.
that would be very, very peculiar, but go for it.
Humans can be pretty savage. Eating something's muscles isn't enough. Rather, we sometimes prefer to grind up the muscles and shove them in the creature's intestines because it holds better on a barbecue.
And we don't bat
I
an eye at
know.
it. We don't bat an eye at it, guys. We love it, and we salivate. I'm
I know.
salivating right now thinking about sausage.
Mm.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Value based, man. Whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. This is kind of interesting. I've been watching some historical documentaries lately. Marrying a cousin is associated with really high, but also really low society.
It's true.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like either like kings and
Mostly just
high
kings
value
and
society
princes and
individuals, but then also low
yeah, I would
socioeconomic
say
people from
there's a
the
certain
Ozarks.
belt that would be known for that around here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Computers are the only thing where too much heat can cause freezing.
True. That's a good one. That took me a second. That's funny. All right, this is my last shower thought. There's probably a lot of GoPro videos where the guy is doing really crazy, dangerous stunts that we never see because they didn't survive.
There's actually, I I don't know this from experience. I just assume it's probably true, but there's quite a few out there that you can see too.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's probably quite a few deaths on
Yeah,
YouTube. Yeah.
I was really into looking up those wingsuits for a while,
Oh, dude.
and
Oh,
one
those
of the
are so sad.
videos was a dude trying to go past a bridge, and there was a crowd of people that knew he
Oh,
was there or gonna be there.
oh no.
He didn't make it
Oh,
over the bridge all the
yeah.
way, and the footage was from his friend who was behind him.
Well, part of him made it over the
True.
bridge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh, brutal.
Don't do
That was
that.
brutal.
That's why I won't have a wingsuit. If life had a reset button, I'd try a wingsuit like now. Um,
Oh yeah, me too. Oh, okay, hit me.
I
You got
have a
any more
couple
shout
more.
outs?
Um,
I just
okay.
get them.
A circle, you have to think about this one too. A
Okay, love it.
circle can be easily used to represent both a whole and a hole.
Hmm.
A hole with a
Yeah,
W and a
yeah,
hole with an H.
yeah. I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Um, there's a thin line between being the cool uncle and being the weird uncle. And last one. The more intelligence someone has, the more willing they're to admit that they don't know something.
Yes, very true. Very good. I very much so agree with that, and I value that a lot.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we had a pleasure
We're still
seeing
friends,
y'all and talking
BT
with y'all.
dubs. We just have
Always love it.
opinions.
That was fun. I had a lot of fun on that one. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate y'all. We hope you have a fantastic week. Enjoy the fantastic weather
Don't jinx it,
in
dude.
the
Don't jinx it,
Northwest.
dude. It's gonna go
Loving
away
it.
soon.
Loving it.
I almost titled this, but nobody would
Ah,
get it. I almost titled this episode instead of the catchy clickbait one that I picked.
yeah.
April showers bring May showers.
April showers bring May
Yeah,
showers.
because the saying goes April showers bring May flowers, but in Oregon, April
Oh, okay.
showers bring May showers.
Yeah, that can definitely be the case for sure. All right, guys. Take care of yourselves this week. We will talk to you
Hopefully,
soon.
sound.
Hopefully next Sunday, I think. Hopefully,
Is
unless
it
I have
gonna
to
be next
work, but I
Sunday?
don't think I do. What is next Sunday?
It's
I
a
have to check.
date.
I don't know. I don't know. I have to look. I have to
Yeah,
see.
it's whatever 7 days from now is. The 6th,
Okay.
17th.
My work schedule's different
Yeah,
every week, so I'll have
that's
to
basically
see.
what we do.
But yep. Awesome. All right, guys. Peace out.
See ya.
Stay classy.
Stay classy,
See
San
you later,
Diego.
alligators. You stay classy. There you
Bye.
go. All right.